The prime rib had been in the oven for 40 minutes when Helene Beaumont's phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. December light slanted through the window above the sink, turning the Cleveland suburbs golden in that particular way that happens only on winter afternoons when the sun sits low and apologetic. She wiped her hands on her apron, the blue one with faded strawberries that Tom had bought her at a craft fair in 2012, and reached for her phone. A text from Camille. "Mom, don't come for Christmas. We need space. You're suffocating us with your expectations. Stay home." Helene read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. She set down the phone with the careful precision of someone handling something that might explode. She turned off the oven timer, removed the roast, perfectly seared, fragrant with rosemary and garlic, and set it on the stovetop to rest. She poured herself a glass of Pinot Noir from the bottle she'd opened for the sauce. She didn't drink it immediately. She just held it, watching the light move through the red liquid. Then she opened her laptop. Her Wells Fargo banking dashboard loaded slowly, the way it always did on her old MacBook. She clicked through to transaction history. Export, last 5 years. The CSV file downloaded with a soft chime. She opened Excel. Tom had taught her, back when he was still alive and patient with technology, and began to sort. Auto payments, Venmo transfers, wire transfers. Every transaction tagged with Camille's name or Luke's. The numbers accumulated in the spreadsheet like sediment settling at the bottom of a river. By the time she finished, the wine in her glass had warmed to room temperature. 187 340s to Camille. $124,680 to Luke. Total, $312,020. Helene stared at the number. Tom's life insurance had been $340,000. She'd promised herself she'd be careful with it, make it last. She'd kept $28,000 for 7 years, $4,000 per year, $333 per month, less than what she'd been sending Luke every week. She picked up her phone and typed a single word. Okay. Then she logged into her bank account and canceled both automatic transfers. The system asked her to confirm. She confirmed. A green checkmark appeared on the screen. Your recurring payments have been successfully canceled. Helene closed her laptop. She drank the wine. She sat in her kitchen as the winter light faded and didn't turn on any lights. The prime rib cooled on the stove, uneaten. The reception after Tom's funeral was held at the house. Helene had insisted. She wanted him home one last time, even if it was just his memory filling the rooms while neighbors ate casseroles and spoke in hushed tones about what a good man he'd been. She was in the kitchen refilling the coffee urn when she heard Camille's voice from the hallway. At least Mom has the life insurance. She'll be okay. Helene's hand froze on the coffee pot. Luke's voice, younger, uncertain. Think she'll help with my student loans? Probably. You know how she is. Helene should have walked into that hallway. Should have said something. Should have drawn a line right then, in that moment when the ink on Tom's death certificate was barely dry. Instead, she finished filling the urn. She smoothed her black dress. She walked into the living room where Camille stood with her husband Nathan, both of them looking exhausted in that particular way young parents with twins always looked. Honey, Helene said, touching Camille's elbow, I know things are hard for you both. Your father would want me to help. How much do you need? Camille's eyes had widened. Oh, Mom, we couldn't. How much? Nathan shifted his weight. Camille looked at him, then back at Helene. The twins' daycare just went up, and Nathan's hours got cut. Maybe 2,000, just to catch up? Helene wrote the check that night. She wrote another one for Luke 3 days later, $3,500 for dental work he claimed was urgent. She told herself Tom would have done the same. Tim. The first payment. June 2019, 14 months after the funeral, Helene sat at her kitchen table with her financial planner, a brisk woman named Rita Castellano, who'd been managing her modest investments since Tom died. You're burning through the principal faster than I'd like, Rita said, tapping her pen against a spreadsheet. At this rate, you'll need to dip into your pension to maintain your lifestyle. What if I set up automatic transfers? Helene asked. A set amount each month, so I know what I'm spending. Rita's eyebrows rose. For what? For my children. They're struggling. I want to help. How much are we talking? $1,200 for Camille, $800 for Luke. Rita was quiet for a moment. Helene, that's $24,000 a year. I know. That's sustainable for maybe 10 years if the market stays stable. After that, I'll be 72. If I'm still alive, I'll figure it out. Rita had closed her folder. It's your money. I just want you to know what you're doing. I do, Helene had said. But she hadn't. Not really. She called Camille that evening. Sweetheart, I've set up a monthly transfer, $1,200 on the first of every month. That should help with the daycare situation. Mom, Camille's voice cracked. You don't have to do this. I want to. You're struggling with the twins, and this is what family does. Well, if you insist, but just temporarily, okay? Of course, Helene said. The word temporarily was never mentioned again. The pattern establishes 2020 to 2024. The requests came in seasons like migratory birds. Spring 2020, Camille's Honda needed a new transmission. $3,200, wired same day. Fall 2021, Luke needed first and last month's rent for a new apartment after his roommate moved out. $1,800. Helene found out 6 months later through a cousin that he'd been evicted from the previous place for non-payment. Summer 2022, Camille breathless on the phone. Mom, the twins' tuition went up again. Can you bump the monthly to $1,500? Helene bumped it to $1,500. Winter 2023, Luke needed $2,200 for dental surgery. 3 weeks later, Helene saw his Instagram story. A new gaming setup, RGB lights glowing in the background. Caption reading, finally upgraded, at your PC master race. March 2024, Helene mentioned carefully over Sunday dinner at Camille's house that she was thinking of refinancing her mortgage to lower her monthly payments. Camille had changed the subject immediately. Oh, Mom, did you see Sophie won the spelling bee? That was the last Sunday dinner Helene was invited to. The phone calls changed too. They came less frequently, and when they did come, they had a transactional quality that Helene tried not to notice. Hi, Mom, just checking. Did this month's payment go through? The bank's being weird. Hey, it's Luke. Quick question about the Venmo you sent. Mother's Day came and went. Camille sent an e-card. Luke texted at 11 p.m. Happy Mother's Day. Sorry, crazy day. Her birthday in September passed with a phone call from each of them, both under 3 minutes. But Helene told herself this was normal. They were busy. They had their own lives. This was what happened when children grew up. She didn't let herself think about the fact that she'd become an ATM with a heartbeat. By 8 o'clock that evening, Helene had 14 missed calls. She sat in Tom's old recliner, the brown leather one she'd been meaning to reupholster for 5 years, and watched her phone light up over and over. She didn't answer. The voicemails started coming. Message 1, Camille, 6:47 p.m. Mom, I don't know what happened with the transfer. It's not showing up. The mortgage payment is due tomorrow. Call me back. Her voice was high, panicked, the voice she used when Sophie had a fever or when Nathan was late picking up the twins. Message 3, Luke, 7:12 p.m. Hey, my bank says the auto payment got canceled. That has to be a mistake, right? Can you call me? Message 6, Luke, 7:54 p.m. Mom, seriously, did you cancel my payment? Over what Camille said? I didn't even do anything. The anger in his voice was familiar. It was the same tone he'd used when she'd refused to co-sign a car loan 2 years ago. He'd called her controlling then, said she didn't trust him. She'd given in 3 days later. Message 11, Camille, 8:23 p.m. Mom, I know you're there. I know you're seeing these. This is ridiculous. We can talk about Christmas later, but you can't just cut us off. We have bills. Answer your phone. Helene set the phone face down on the side table. She stood, walked to the mantel, and picked up the framed photo of Tom. It had been taken at Niagara Falls in 2015, 3 years before the stroke. He was grinning at the camera, squinting against the sun, his arm around her shoulders. She remembered what he'd said in the hospital 1 week before he died. His speech was already slurred from the first stroke, but he'd gripped her hand and forced the words out. "Don't let them take advantage, Hel. You're stronger than you think." She'd assumed he was talking about medical bills, insurance companies, funeral homes. Now she wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. "I should have listened," she whispered to the photograph. The phone rang again. She didn't even look. Scene 2. Sister Linda's call. The call from Linda came at 9:15 the next morning while Helene was trying to force down toast she didn't want. "Hel, it's me. I just got off the phone with Camille." Helene set down her coffee. "And?" "She's worried about you. She said you're having some kind of breakdown, that you cut them off financially without any warning. Are you okay?" Helene laughed. It came out sharp, humorless. "Did she tell you what she texted me yesterday?" A pause. "She said she was stressed and didn't mean it. She told me not to come for Christmas, that I'm suffocating them with my expectations, that they don't want to see me." Silence on the other end. Linda had lost her own husband 9 years ago, to cancer. She understood grief, understood loneliness, understood the particular ache of holidays spent alone. "Jesus," Linda said finally. "Linda, I added it up last night. I've sent Camille $187,000 in the past 5 years. The silence this time stretched longer. "Jesus Christ, Hel, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought I was being a good mother." "And now?" Helene looked out her kitchen window at the bird feeder Tom had built. 2 cardinals were fighting over the perch. "Now I think I was being an ATM," Linda sighed. "Hel, I need to tell you something. Camille called me last month, asked if I could lend them $5,000. Helene's stomach dropped. "What?" "She said you were getting forgetful, and they didn't want to burden you. I told her I didn't have that kind of money lying around. But Hel, she was already planning this, already setting up a narrative where you're too fragile to handle your own finances." The toast sat like concrete in Helene's stomach. They were going to cut her out. They were going to take control, and they were doing it while still taking her money. "I have to go," Helene said. "Wait, what are you going to—" "I'll call you later." She hung up and sat very still in her kitchen. Then she pulled out her laptop and Googled "Financial Exploitation Elderly Ohio Attorney Mod." Scene 3. Luke shows up. The knock came at 2:15 that afternoon. Helene had been expecting it. She'd seen Luke's car pull into the driveway 5 minutes earlier, watched him sit behind the wheel for a long moment before getting out. He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes rumpled. He hadn't shaved in at least 3 days. "Mom," he said when she opened the door, "we need to talk about this." She stepped aside to let him in, but didn't offer coffee. The omission was pointed. They sat in the living room. Luke perched on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, the posture of someone preparing to plead his case. "Look, I know Camille was harsh," he started, "but you can't punish me for what she said." "When was the last time you visited me, Luke?" "Not to ask for money, just to visit." He blinked. I'm busy, Mom. I work 50 hours a week." "You posted Instagram stories at a Cavaliers game last week. Premium seats." His face flushed. "A friend had extra tickets. Those seats are $300 each, but you can't make rent?" That's different." "How?" Luke stood abruptly, paced to the window. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Mom. Everyone at work is buying houses, getting married, having kids. I'm 31 years old and I have nothing. Nothing. You and Dad always said I'd be successful if I just worked hard, but it's not enough. It's never enough, and I'm tired of feeling like a failure." His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, Helene saw the 10-year-old boy who'd cried when he struck out at Little League. Then she saw the Venmo transaction she'd screenshotted last night. "So you gamble," she said quietly, "to feel successful." Luke froze. The color drained from his face. "How did you— Your Venmo is public, Luke. DraftKings, BetMGM, FanDuel, dozens of transactions." He turned to face her. "You were spying on me?" "I was trying to understand where my money was going." "Your money!" His voice rose, sharp with anger. That's all it ever is to you, isn't it? Control. You want to control us with your money, and when we don't dance like puppets, get out. What? Get out of my house. Luke stared at her. She'd never spoken to him like this. Never. Even when he'd wrecked her car at 17, even when he'd dropped out of college for a semester, she'd been patient, understanding, forgiving. Mom. Now. He left. The door didn't quite slam, but it closed hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the wall. Helene sat in the sudden silence of her living room and felt nothing. Not guilt, not sadness, not relief. Just a strange, hollow calm. Her phone was already out. She was already dialing the number for Catherine Hartwell, attorney at law. Catherine Hartwell's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian on Prospect Avenue. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes and a nose ring, showed Helene into a conference room with high ceilings and windows that overlooked the street. Catherine entered 5 minutes later. She was 68, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. She'd been practicing family law for 40 years. Mrs. Beaumont, she said, shaking Helene's hand. Thank you for sending over the documents. I've reviewed everything. She sat down across from Helene and folded her hands on the table. I'm going to be direct with you. What your children are doing qualifies as financial exploitation of an elderly person under Ohio law. I'm 62, Helene said. I'm not elderly. In legal terms, you are. And the pattern here is clear. Emotional manipulation combined with systematic financial extraction. That text message about Christmas, followed immediately by panic when the money stopped? That's textbook. Helene looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring caught the afternoon light. I gave it willingly. Under duress. Under the threat of losing access to your grandchildren. Under a lifetime of conditioning that love equals providing. Catherine's voice gentled. Helene, I've seen this before. Adult children who learn to weaponize their parents' love. It's insidious because it masquerades as need. They do need help. Nathan's hours were cut 3 years ago. He's been working full-time at the hospital for 18 months. I checked. Helene's head snapped up. How did you... LinkedIn is public. Camille posted about his promotion last spring. Catherine slid a printout across the table. Nathan Moreau, RN, Cleveland Clinic. Full-time, benefits, good salary. They lied to you, Catherine said simply. The words hung in the air. Helene thought about the Aruba vacation she'd seen on Camille's Instagram, the new SUV in Luke's stories, the designer handbags, the restaurant check-ins, the casual mentions of expenses that never seemed to match the narrative of struggle. What do I do? She asked. Catherine opened a folder. First, we protect your assets. New will, trust fund for your grandchildren that their parents can't access. Second, we document everything. Every call, every text, every interaction. Third, and this is important, you prepare yourself for escalation. Escalation? They may lawyer up. They may claim you're incompetent and file for conservatorship. I've seen it happen. When the money stops, people get desperate. Helene felt something cold settle in her chest. They wouldn't. Catherine's expression was kind but firm. Helene, they've already laid groundwork. That comment to Linda about you being forgetful, that's not accidental. That's strategic. The room felt very small suddenly. I have a daughter, Catherine continued quietly. She didn't speak to me for 3 years because I wouldn't co-sign a loan she couldn't afford. 3 years of holidays alone, of missed birthdays, of wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. What happened? She went bankrupt. Lost everything. Came back and apologized. Catherine smiled sadly. We have lunch twice a month now. She pays. It took hitting bottom for her to grow up. So I should just wait for them to hit bottom? You should protect yourself. Set boundaries. And yes, wait. See who they become when the money isn't an option. Catherine pushed a stack of papers forward. This is a retainer agreement. If you want to proceed, we start now. If you want time to think, I don't need time, Helene said. She picked up the pen Catherine offered and began to sign. Outside the window, Cleveland was settling into early winter darkness. Streetlights flickered on. Traffic moved in slow patterns. Life continued, indifferent to the small revolutions happening in law office conference rooms. Helene signed her name on the last page and set down the pen. "What happens now?" she asked. Catherine gathered the documents. "Now? You go home. You don't answer calls unless you want to. You document everything, and you wait." "For how long?" "Until they show you who they really are." Helene drove home through streets decorated for Christmas. Lights twinkled in windows. Inflatable Santas wobbled on front lawns. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a long moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Her phone showed 23 missed calls. She turned it off, got out of the car, and walked into her empty house. The prime rib from yesterday was still on the stove, cold and forgotten. She threw it away and made herself a grilled cheese sandwich instead. Small victories, she thought. You start with small victories. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. The kind of Cleveland winter day where the sky and the ground seemed to merge into a single colorless expanse. Helene woke at 6:30, old habits from decades of early morning holiday preparations, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. No texts, no calls, not even the cursory Merry Christmas that Luke usually sent around noon. She made coffee. She ate toast. She showered and dressed in jeans and a sweater Tom had always liked, cream-colored with pearl buttons. Then she got in her car and drove to St. Vincent's Soup Kitchen on the east side. The volunteer coordinator, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, handed her an apron and stationed her at the serving line. For 4 hours, Helene ladled mashed potatoes onto plastic plates, smiled at faces weathered by homelessness and hard luck, and accepted thanks with a graciousness that felt both genuine and performative. "You're new," said a woman in line, maybe 45 but looking 60, with matted hair and kind eyes. "I remember faces." "First time," Helene admitted. "Brave, coming on Christmas. Most volunteers want to be with family today." The woman smiled, revealing missing teeth. "You got kind eyes, though. Your family's lucky." Helene's throat tightened. "Thank you." She served until 2 o'clock, then drove home through empty streets. Her neighbors' houses blazed with light and life. Children's silhouettes moving behind curtains, cars crowding driveways, the cellular chaos of family gatherings. Her own house was dark. She turned on the television for company and fell asleep on the couch at 7:30, a documentary about penguin migration playing to an empty room. Week 2, December 26th, January 1st, Linda called on the 27th. "Hell, I ran into Camille at Kroger yesterday." Helene muted the television. "And?" "She looks awful, really awful. Dark circles, no makeup, sweatpants at 2 in the afternoon. She asked if I'd talk to you." "What did you say?" "I said you seemed fine to me." Linda paused. "She's your daughter, Hel. Maybe she's learned her lesson?" "Has she apologized?" Silence. Then, "No." "Then she hasn't learned anything." But after they hung up, Helene sat with her phone in her lap for 20 minutes, thumb hovering over Camille's contact. It would be so easy. One call, one conversation. Maybe they could fix this. Then she remembered. "Don't you dare come for Christmas. We don't want to see you." She set the phone down. That night, she joined a book club at the library, 12 women ranging from their 50s to their 80s, discussing the remains of the day with the intensity of people who understood something about service and regret. They welcomed her without questions, without expectations. When the meeting ended, 3 of them invited her to coffee the following week. She accepted. Week 3, January 8th. The package arrived on January 4th, a Tuesday. Brown cardboard, no return address, but Helene recognized Camille's handwriting on the label. She opened it at the kitchen table with coffee going cold beside her. Inside, 2 handmade cards, clearly done under parental supervision. Sophie's was construction paper covered in crayon drawings. A stick figure with yellow hair labeled Grandma. A house with hearts floating above it. At the bottom, in 6-year-old handwriting, "I miss you, Grandma. Love, Sophie." Julian's was simpler. A drawing of what might have been a cat or a dog. Impossible to tell. And in careful, coached letters, "Why don't you love us anymore?" Helene's hands shook. She set the cards on the table and stared at them for 5 full minutes. This was the weapon she'd been dreading. The one thing she had no defense against. Her grandchildren, used as ammunition. She called Catherine Hartwell. "They're using the kids," she said without preamble. "Expected. What specifically?" Helene described the cards. Catherine listened in silence. "Don't respond yet," Catherine said finally. "I'm drafting a letter to Camille. Any further contact involving the children will be documented as parental alienation. We're establishing a paper trail." "Catherine, they're 6 years old. They don't understand." "Which is exactly why using them this way is unconscionable." Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. "Helene, I know this hurts, but if you give in now, you're teaching Camille that weaponizing her children works. Is that what you want Sophie and Julian to learn about relationships?" Helene closed her eyes. "No." "Then we hold the line." After hanging up, Helene put the cards in a drawer. Not thrown away. She couldn't bring herself to do that, but out of sight. That evening, her phone rang from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Helene?" A man's voice, familiar but strained. "It's Nathan. Please don't hang up." Helene stood at her kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear, watching the neighbor's dog dig in the snow. "What do you want, Nathan?" "To talk. Not about money, I swear. Just... Can I come over? Tomorrow? I need to tell you something." Every instinct screamed not to trust this, but there was something in his voice, desperation maybe or shame, that didn't sound rehearsed. "1 hour, she said, tomorrow at 2. If Camille is with you, I'm not opening the door." "She won't be. She doesn't know I'm calling." Nathan arrived at 1:58, early in the way anxious people always are. Helene watched from the window as he sat in his car for a full minute, gathering courage. She opened the door before he could knock. He looked worse than she'd expected. Thinner, older somehow, though only a month had passed. The kind of aging that happens from the inside out, stress carving new lines into familiar faces. "Come in," she said. They sat in the living room. Helene didn't offer coffee. Nathan didn't ask for any. He sat on the edge of the couch, exactly where Luke had sat 2 weeks ago, and stared at his hands. "I didn't know," he said finally. "About the amount. About how she was treating you. I swear to God, Helene, I didn't know." "What did you think was happening?" "I thought you were sending us a couple hundred a month. Maybe 500, 600 max. She told me it was just to help with daycare, that you wanted to, that it made you feel needed after Tom died." He looked up and his eyes were red-rimmed. "I believed her." "When did you find out?" "When the mortgage payment bounced. She had a complete meltdown, said you'd cut us off, said we were going to lose the house. I asked how much you'd been sending." His voice dropped. "She wouldn't tell me at first. I had to pull the bank statements myself." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and handed it to Helene. It was a spreadsheet, meticulously detailed. Every deposit from Helene for the past 5 years. The total at the bottom, $187,340. "Jesus Christ," Nathan whispered. "I said it out loud when I saw the number. Jesus Christ, Camille, what have you done?" Helene set the paper on the coffee table. "That's not all, though, is it?" Nathan shook his head. "Credit card debt. $43,000. I didn't know about that either. She'd been making minimum payments with your money and hiding the statements." $43,000 on what?" "Clothes, furniture, the Aruba trip last spring, restaurants. She told me that was all on points, on deals, on sales." He laughed bitterly. "I'm a nurse, Helene. I work 50-hour weeks. I thought we were doing okay. Thought we were building something. Turns out we were just spending your life." Silence settled between them. Outside, children's voices rang out. Someone building a snowman, judging by the laughter. Why are you telling me this? Helene asked. Nathan met her eyes. Because last night, Sophie asked me why Grandma doesn't love her anymore, and I realized Camille had told her that. She's poisoning our kids against you to cover her own guilt, and I can't— His voice cracked. I can't let that happen. What did you tell Sophie? I told her that Grandma loves her very, very much, that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that have nothing to do with kids, and that Mommy made a mistake and is having a hard time admitting it. How did Camille react to that? We had the biggest fight we've ever had. She accused me of taking your side, said I was betraying her. I slept on the couch. He rubbed his face. I don't know if our marriage is going to survive this. Helene felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Nathan had always been kind, if passive, a good father, a decent man who'd made the mistake of trusting the wrong person. Nathan, can I ask you something? Anything. Did Camille ever talk about how she felt about me growing up? He frowned, thinking. Sometimes. She'd say you and Tom were hard to please, that nothing was ever quite good enough. But I figured that was normal parent stuff, you know? Everyone thinks their parents expected too much. What else? She said— He hesitated. She said you showed love by doing things, by helping. That words didn't mean much in your family, but actions did. I thought that was sweet, actually. That you were a doer. Helene felt something shift in her chest. A recognition. I taught her that love is transactional, she said quietly. I taught her that my value came from what I could provide. And now she's treating me exactly the way I taught her to. Nathan's eyes widened. Helene, no. This isn't your fault. You didn't force her to— I didn't force her, but I paved the road. She stood, walked to the mantel, picked up Tom's photo. Tom tried to warn me. Before he died, he said not to let them take advantage. I thought he meant strangers, bill collectors. I didn't realize he meant our own daughter. Can I see them? Nathan asked. The twins. Can I bring them to visit you? Helene turned. Does Camille know you're here? No. Will you tell her? I don't know yet. Then no. Not until you decide whose side you're on. Nathan stood slowly. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm trying to do what's right. What's right is telling your daughter the truth. That her grandmother loves her. That this situation is complicated and adult and not her fault. Can you do that? Yes. Then do it. And Nathan? She walked him to the door. Get a good lawyer. If Camille's hiding $43,000 in debt from you, there's probably more you don't know about. He nodded, looking miserable, and left. Helene watched his car disappear down the street. Then she called Catherine and recounted every word. Document it, Catherine said. Nathan could be an ally, or he could be a spy. We don't know yet. I think he's sincere. You thought Camille was struggling. Trust, but verify. The process server arrived on January 15th at 9 in the morning. Helene was making oatmeal when the doorbell rang. A young woman with a clipboard and a professional smile stood on the porch. Helene Beaumont? Yes? You've been served. She handed over a thick manila envelope. Have a nice day. Helene stood in her doorway, envelope in hand, watching the woman drive away. Her hands were steady as she opened it. Petition for guardianship and conservatorship in the matter of Helene Marie Beaumont. Petitioners, Camille Beaumont, Moreau and Luke Andrew Beaumont. She read the opening paragraph twice. The petitioners respectfully request that the court appoint them as co-guardians and co-conservators of Helene Marie Beaumont, who has exhibited signs of diminished cognitive capacity, poor financial judgment, and erratic behavior consistent with early-stage dementia. The kitchen tilted slightly. Helene sat down hard in a chair. They were trying to have her declared incompetent. She kept reading. Attached was a letter on medical letterhead from Dr. Richard Pemberton, M.D., stating that, based on extensive interviews with family members, I have significant concerns regarding Mrs. Beaumont's cognitive function and capacity to manage her financial affairs. Helene didn't know any Dr. Richard Pemberton. She called Catherine. Her voice came out surprisingly calm. They filed the petition. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Catherine arrived in 23 minutes. She read the document standing at Helene's kitchen counter, her expression growing darker with each page. This is exactly what I warned you about, the nuclear option. Can they win? Catherine set down the papers. No, absolutely not. But Helene, this is going to be public. There will be a court hearing. They're going to claim you're mentally incompetent in front of a judge. Are you prepared for that? Do I have a choice? You could settle, resume some level of financial support in exchange for them dropping the petition. Helene thought about Sophie's card, about Julian asking why Grandma didn't love him, about 7 years of checks and wire transfers and automatic payments, about Tom's voice. Don't let them take advantage. No, she said. We fight. Catherine smiled grimly. Good, because I already scheduled you for a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Angela Reeves, tomorrow at 10. She's the best in Cleveland for competency assessments. That fast? I've been preparing for this since you walked into my office. I told you, when the money stops, people get desperate. Dr. Angela Reeves's office was in University Circle, on the 4th floor of a medical building that smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. The waiting room had artificial plants and magazines from 2023. Dr. Reeves was a black woman in her early 50s with natural hair styled in elegant locks and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every lie patients could tell. Mrs. Beaumont, I'm going to be honest with you. This evaluation is going to take about 4 hours, and some of it won't be pleasant. I'll be asking you to repeat things, remember things, solve problems. It might feel patronizing, but I need you to take it seriously. I understand. The first hour was cognitive testing. Count backward from 100 by sevens. Repeat these words. Draw a clock showing 3:15. Name as many animals as you can in 60 seconds. Helene performed perfectly. The second hour was memory. Tell me about your childhood, your marriage, your children's births. What did you have for breakfast 3 days ago? Helene remembered everything. The third hour was executive function. Dr. Reeves gave her a mock checkbook and asked her to balance it, identify which bills needed to be paid first, explain her investment strategy. Helene walked her through it all, including her calculation that at current spending rates, including what she'd been sending her children, she would have been insolvent by age 74. Dr. Reeves made notes. Lots of notes. The final hour was emotional assessment. Tell me why your children filed this petition. Because I stopped giving them money. Why did you stop? Helene took a breath. Because my daughter told me not to come for Christmas, that I was suffocating them with my expectations. When I stopped sending money, they panicked. This petition isn't about my welfare. It's about my wallet. How does that make you feel? Angry, sad, guilty. Guilty? I taught them this. I taught them that love is what you do, not what you say. That my value came from providing, and now they're treating me exactly the way I trained them to. Dr. Reeves set down her pen. Mrs. Beaumont, can I ask you something personal? Please. Do you feel guilty for cutting them off? Every single day. Good. Helene blinked. Good? It means you're not a sociopath. It means you're a mother who made a hard choice. Guilt means you care. But caring doesn't mean you were wrong. Something in Helene's chest loosened. Thank you. Dr. Reeves smiled. You're one of the most mentally sharp people I've evaluated in months. Your cognitive function is excellent. Your judgment is sound. There is absolutely no evidence of diminished capacity. You'll testify to that? I'll write a report that makes it crystal clear. And if needed, yes, I'll testify. 3 days after the evaluation, Luke appeared at Helene's door. She almost didn't answer, but something about the way he stood on the porch, shoulders slumped, hands shoved in pockets, made her turn the knob. Mom, his voice was quiet. Can I come in? I need to talk to you. If this is about the petition, I'm withdrawing from it. I told Camille yesterday. I won't be part of this. Helene stared at him. What? Can I come in? Please? She stepped aside. Luke sat on the couch, but differently this time. Not on the edge, combative and defensive. He sat back, hands clasped between his knees, looking at the floor. "I've been going to meetings," he said. "GA, Gamblers Anonymous. I started 3 weeks ago, right after you confronted me about the Venmo." Helene sat down across from him and waited. "My sponsor made me do a 4th step, an inventory of everyone I've hurt. Mom, you're at the top of the list. Not close to the top. At the top." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. His hands were shaking. "I wrote you a letter. My sponsor said I should read it to you in person. Can I?" Helene nodded, not trusting her voice. Luke unfolded the paper. His voice broke on the first sentence. "I stole from you. Not with a gun, but with guilt. I used your love as leverage. I told myself I deserved it, that you owed me somehow, that it was your job as a mother to help me. But I was lying. To you and to myself." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I blamed you for my failures when you were the only thing keeping me from hitting bottom. Every bet I lost, I could tell myself it was okay because Mom would help if things got really bad. You were my safety net, and I turned you into a crutch." His voice steadied, but barely. "I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I'm done lying. I'm 26 days without a bet. That's all I have. One day at a time. But it's mine. It's real, and I'm not asking you for anything except to hear me say, I was wrong. You were right, and I'm sorry." He folded the paper with shaking hands. Helene stood, walked to the mantel, picked up the small wooden box she kept there. Inside was Tom's 30-day poker chip from AA. White plastic the size of a silver dollar. She'd saved it for 20 years. She handed it to Luke. "Your father fought this too. Different addiction, same demons. He'd want you to have this." Luke looked at the chip, then at her, then back at the chip. His face crumpled. "Mom." She opened her arms. He fell into them, and for the first time since he was a child, her son cried on her shoulder. Real tears, not manipulation. The kind of crying that comes from breaking down to build back up. They stood like that for a long time. When he finally pulled away, he wiped his face with his sleeve. "I'm still not asking for money," he said. "I know. And I can't promise I won't relapse. The odds are against me. One day at a time." "Yeah." He gave her a watery smile. One day at a time. After he left, Helene sat in the quiet of her living room and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. One child might be salvageable after all. But the question remained, what about the other? The answer came 2 days later. Camille arrived unannounced at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. Helene saw the SUV pull into the driveway, saw Sophie and Julian in the back seat, saw Camille's set jaw as she got out. She opened the door before Camille could ring the bell. "Girls," Camille said coldly, "go hug Grandma." Sophie and Julian tumbled out of the car and ran to Helene. She knelt on the porch and wrapped her arms around them both, breathing in the smell of strawberry shampoo and childhood. "We missed you so much, Grandma," Sophie whispered. "I missed you too, sweetheart. Both of you." She stood, still holding their hands, and looked at Camille. "What are you doing?" Camille walked up the porch steps. Up close, she looked worse than Nathan had described. Dark circles, bitten nails, the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting a losing battle. "Giving you a chance," Camille said. "Drop the lawyer. Resume the payments. We forget this happened. And if I don't, then you don't see them again." She nodded at the twins. "Your choice. Money or grandchildren." Helene knelt down to Sophie and Julian's level. "Girls, I need you to listen very carefully. Grandma loves you both more than anything in the world. More than the moon and the stars and all the oceans. No matter what anyone says, no matter what happens, that will never, ever change. Do you understand?" They nodded, wide-eyed. "Good." She kissed each of their foreheads. "Now go get back in the car." They looked at their mother, confused, but obeyed. Helene stood and faced Camille. "You need to leave. You're choosing pride over your grandchildren. What kind of grandmother does that? What kind of mother, Helene said quietly, uses her children as weapons? Camille's face twisted. You did this. You created this. You taught me that everything has a price, and now you're mad that I learned the lesson. You're right, Helene said. I did teach you that, and that was my failure. But you're 34 years old, Camille. At some point, you have to take responsibility for who you choose to be. I'm drowning, Mom. Camille's voice rose to a shout. Don't you get it? I'm drowning, and you're the only lifeline I have, and you're letting go. No, Helene said. I'm teaching you to swim. There's a difference. Camille stared at her. Then she laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Fine, fine. Don't come crying to me when you're old and alone and there's no one to take care of you. Don't expect cards or calls or visits. You're making your choice, and you're going to have to live with it. She turned and walked back to the car. Through the windshield, Helene could see Sophie crying. The car backed out of the driveway, disappeared down the street. Helene stood on her porch in the January cold and watched until the taillights were gone. Then she went inside, locked the door, and called Catherine. She brought the kids, tried to make me choose. And I chose me. Good, Catherine said. Court date is February 14th, 2 weeks. You ready? Helene looked at Tom's photo on the mantel, at the empty living room, at the life she was building from the wreckage of the old one. Yes, she said. I'm ready. The Cuyahoga County Probate Court smelled like floor wax and old wood. Helene sat beside Catherine in a courtroom that was smaller than she'd expected, more institutional. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The walls were that particular shade of beige that government buildings seem to require by law. Across the aisle, Camille sat with her attorney, Peter Harrison, a man in his early 40s with slicked-back hair and a suit that cost more than Helene's monthly pension. Camille wore a navy dress, pearls, minimal makeup, the costume of a concerned daughter. She hadn't looked at Helene once. Luke sat in the back row, on Helene's side. The bailiff called the room to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Miriam Blake. Judge Blake entered, a black woman in her mid-60s with silver-streaked hair, and the kind of expression that suggested she'd heard every lie the legal system had to offer. She settled into her seat and reviewed the documents before her. This is a petition for guardianship and conservatorship of Helene Marie Beaumont, filed by her children, Camille Moreau and Luc Beaumont. She looked up over her reading glasses. I see Mr. Beaumont has withdrawn from the petition. Is that correct? Luke stood. Yes, Your Honor. Then we proceed with Mrs. Moreau as sole petitioner. Mr. Harrison, you may present your opening statement. Harrison stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Your Honor, this is a difficult case for my client. Camille Moreau loves her mother deeply. That's precisely why she's here. Over the past several months, Mrs. Beaumont has exhibited erratic behavior that has caused her family significant concern. She has made irrational financial decisions, cutting off long-standing support to her family without warning or explanation. She has isolated herself socially, withdrawn from family gatherings, and exhibited paranoid thinking, accusing her children of manipulation and exploitation. Dr. Richard Pemberton's letter, which has been submitted to the court, outlines these concerns based on extensive family interviews. Judge Blake interrupted. Dr. Pemberton examined Mrs. Beaumont when exactly? Harrison's smooth delivery stuttered. He hasn't formally examined her, Your Honor, but based on detailed interviews with family members who have observed, hearsay dressed as medical opinion. Noted. Continue. Your Honor, Mrs. Moreau can testify to her mother's concerning behavior. She has witnessed firsthand the decline in her mother's judgment and capacity. Then let's hear from her. Mrs. Moreau, please take the stand. Camille stood, smoothing her dress. She walked to the witness stand with the careful steps of someone walking on ice. After being sworn in, she sat with her hands folded in her lap. Harrison approached. Mrs. Moreau, when did you first notice changes in your mother's behavior? Last December. Camille's voice was soft, rehearsed. She became paranoid, accusatory. She claimed we were using her for money when we've always been so grateful for her help. Did your mother give you financial assistance? She insisted on it. After my father died, she said it made her feel needed, feel like she was still taking care of family. We tried to refuse, but she insisted. Helene's hands tightened in her lap. Catherine placed a steadying hand on her arm. And what changed in December? Harrison asked. She just stopped. Everything. The payments, the contact, the relationship. She told us not to come for Christmas. She won't see her own grandchildren. Camille's voice broke. Real tears formed in her eyes. This isn't the mother I know. The mother I know would never shut out her family like this. Thank you, Mrs. Moreau. No further questions. Judge Blake looked at Catherine. Cross-examination, Ms. Hartwell? Catherine stood. She didn't approach the witness stand immediately. She stayed at her table, letting the silence stretch. Mrs. Moreau, how much money did your mother give you over the past 5 years? Camille blinked. I'm not sure of the exact $187,340. Does that sound approximately correct? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Camille's face paled. If you say so. Did you keep track of that amount? No, it wasn't a loan. It was, what was it? A gift from a mother who loved us. Catherine walked to her table and picked up a document. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit C, a printout of Mrs. Moreau's Instagram account from January 7th of this year. She projected an image on the courtroom screen. Camille, Nathan, and the twins on a beach. Crystal blue water. White sand. Everyone smiling in expensive swimwear. This is from your vacation to Aruba, is that correct? Camille's jaw tightened. Yes. How did you pay for this vacation? Credit card points. Which credit card? I don't remember exactly. Catherine held up another document. Your Honor, Exhibit D, Mrs. Moreau's credit card statements provided by her husband, Nathan Moreau. The Aruba trip was charged to a Visa card. Total cost, $6,200. No points redemption. Full charge. Camille's face flushed red. That's a private financial... Mrs. Moreau, did you tell your mother you were struggling financially while planning a $6,000 vacation? We needed a break. Do you know how stressful it is raising twins? Did you tell your mother about your $43,000 in credit card debt? Silence. Camille stared at Catherine with something approaching hatred. Mrs. Moreau, answer the question. No. Did you tell her your husband has been working full-time at Cleveland Clinic for the past 18 months? I don't see how... Yes or no, Mrs. Moreau? No. Catherine walked closer to the witness stand. So when your mother stopped sending money, you filed a petition claiming she's mentally incompetent. Is that the sequence of events? It's not that simple, isn't it? Your mother made a decision you didn't like, to stop giving you money, and you responded by trying to have her declared legally incompetent so you could control her assets. Is that not exactly what happened? She's not thinking clearly. Camille's composure cracked. She has more than enough. She's sitting on $200,000 while her grandchildren... While her grandchildren what? Catherine's voice was sharp. Attend $18,000 per year private school? Take beach vacations? Have the latest toys and clothes? Suffer, Mrs. Moreau? That's not fair. What's not fair is using your children as emotional leverage. What's not fair is filing false medical claims to access your mother's finances. What's not fair, Mrs. Moreau, is trying to punish your mother for setting boundaries. Objection. Harrison stood. Counsel is badgering the witness. Overruled, Judge Blake said coolly. Continue, Ms. Hartwell. No further questions, Your Honor. Camille stepped down, her face blotchy with tears and rage. Ms. Hartwell, call your witness. The defense calls Mrs. Helene Beaumont. Helene's legs felt unsteady as she walked to the witness stand. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. When she sat, she made herself look at Camille. Her daughter wouldn't meet her eyes. Catherine's questions were gentle, straightforward. Why did you stop financial support? What was your relationship with your daughter like? How did you feel about her text message? Helene answered each one honestly. I realized our relationship had become transactional, she said. Everything was conditional on what I could provide, and I wondered if I'd taught her that. If I'd made her believe that love and money were the same thing. Do you love your daughter, Mrs. Beaumont? Helene looked at Camille, really looked at her, saw the woman she'd raised, the mother she'd become, the stranger she now was. Yes, Helene said, but I don't like who she's become, and I'm afraid that's my fault. Harrison's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. He tried to paint Helene as bitter, as vindictive, as confused. But every answer she gave was clear, measured, rational. When both sides rested, Judge Blake removed her glasses. I've reviewed Dr. Reeves's comprehensive psychiatric evaluation of Mrs. Beaumont. She scored perfectly on cognitive assessments. Her memory is excellent. Her financial judgment is sound. There is no evidence whatsoever of diminished capacity. She looked at Camille. What I see instead is an adult daughter who has become financially dependent on her mother and responded to boundary setting with legal intimidation. This petition is not about Mrs. Beaumont's welfare. It's about access to her assets. The gavel came down. Petition denied. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning Mrs. Moreau for filing a frivolous claim. Mrs. Moreau will pay Mrs. Beaumont's legal fees in the amount of $6,000 within 30 days. This court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Camille buried her face in her hands. Harrison was already packing his briefcase, distancing himself from his client. Catherine leaned close to Helene. You did it. But Helene didn't feel victorious. She felt sad. She stood and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Camille's voice. Mom! Mom, wait! The February air was sharp and cold. Helene's breath came out in white clouds as she walked across the courthouse parking lot toward her car. Mom, please! Camille was running after her, heels clicking on asphalt. Please wait! Helene stopped, didn't turn around. Camille caught up, breathing hard. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Helene turned slowly. Up close in the gray winter light, Camille looked broken, mascara-streaked, desperate. What did you mean then? Helene asked. I don't know. Camille's voice cracked. Everything is so hard, Mom. Nathan's talking about divorce. I'm drowning in debt. The girls ask why we can't do things their friends do, and I feel like I'm failing everyone. You were the only person who never made me feel like a failure, until you did. By setting a boundary? By abandoning me. The words came out raw. My whole life I watched you and Dad. Everything was about achievement, success, providing. You didn't say I love you much, but you showed it. You did things. You helped. You gave. I learned that love is what you do, not what you say. She was crying openly now. So when you stopped doing, when you stopped giving, I thought you stopped loving me. I thought I'd finally failed so badly that even you gave up on me. The realization hit Helene like a physical blow. This was it, the core wound, the thing she'd been afraid to see. Oh, Camille, she whispered. She reached for her daughter. Camille collapsed into her arms, sobbing against her shoulder the way she hadn't since she was a child. I'm sorry, Helene said into her daughter's hair. I'm so sorry I taught you the wrong lesson. That love has to be earned. That it comes with conditions. That's not love, baby. That's business. Camille pulled back, wiping her face. But you're right. I did use you. I did treat you like an ATM. Even knowing it was wrong, I kept doing it because I didn't know how to stop. Do you understand? Helene said carefully, holding Camille's face in her hands. That filing that petition, trying to have me declared incompetent, that hurt me more than anything you've ever done? I know. Camille's voice was small. I know. I'm a terrible person. No. You're a person who made terrible choices. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Helene's thumbs wiped away her daughter's tears. I will always love you, Camille. Always. But I can't save you. You have to save yourself. How? It came out as a whisper. Therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions. Financial counseling. Face the debt. Face the spending. Face whatever hole you're trying to fill with things and trips and the appearance of success. Will you help me? The question hung between them. Yes, Helene said. But not with money. Camille flinched as if she'd been slapped. I'll go to therapy with you if you want. I'll babysit the girls while you work. I'll teach you to budget, to cook cheap meals, to live within your means. But I won't enable you anymore. I won't be your safety net. Can you accept that? The silence stretched. Cars pulled in and out of the parking lot. Somewhere a dog barked. The world continued, indifferent to their private reckoning. I don't know if I can, Camille said finally. Helene felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. Then we're at an impasse. She kissed Camille's forehead, the way she had when Camille was small, when a kiss could fix everything. I love you, Helene said. When you're ready to do the hard work, call me. I'll be here. She got in her car, started the engine, drove away. In the rearview mirror, she saw Camille standing alone in the parking lot, arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. The August sun was bright and hot. Helene's backyard smelled like charcoal and cut grass. She stood at the grill, flipping burgers, while voices and laughter filled the air behind her. Linda and her 2 sons were playing cornhole. Luke stood with his sponsor, Marcus, a quiet man in his 50s who'd been sober for 12 years, discussing something earnestly. Nathan sat at the picnic table with Sophie and Julian, helping them color. No Camille. Nathan had called 2 weeks ago to ask if he could bring the girls. He and Camille were separated. Divorce papers filed, though not finalized. He had the house in primary custody while Camille was in a 90-day intensive therapy program. How is she? Helene had asked. Angry, Nathan said. Really angry. At me, at you, at herself, mostly. But she's working. The therapist says she has a lot to unpack. Is she ready to see me? No. She asked me to tell you that specifically. She's not ready. It had hurt, but Helene understood. Some work had to be done alone. Now, watching Nathan help Julian stay inside the lines of his coloring book, she felt grateful. The twins were safe, loved. That was what mattered. Grandma, Sophie ran over. Can we have a sleepover tonight? Helene looked at Nathan. He nodded. Of course, sweetheart. We'll make popcorn and watch a movie. Sophie squealed and ran back to tell Julianne. Luke approached carrying paper plates. Need help? You can start bringing these out. As he loaded burgers onto the plates, he said quietly, I got promoted, assistant manager at the store. Luke, that's wonderful. And he looked embarrassed. I opened a savings account, first time ever. Would you, this is weird, but would you help me set up a budget? Teach me how to actually manage money? Helene set down the spatula and hugged him. I'd love to. And Mom? He pulled back. I want to pay you back, $100 a month. It'll take forever, but you don't have to. I know. That's why I want to. I need to. Not for you. For me. Pride swelled in her chest. Okay. Yes, thank you. After everyone had eaten and the sun started to set, Linda helped Helene clean up in the kitchen. You look happy, Linda observed. I am. Helene realized it was true. I didn't think I would be. I thought choosing myself meant being alone. And instead? Instead, I have a life, a real one, not just a supporting role in someone else's story. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened the text message. Mom, it's Camille. They let us have phones 1 hour a week. I'm not ready to talk, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I see it now, how I used you, how I learned to equate love with transactions. I'm unlearning it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't know if I'll ever be the daughter you deserved, but I'm going to try to be the mother my girls deserve. Maybe that's a start. I love you. Helene's vision blurred with tears. She typed back carefully. I love you too. Take your time. I'll be here. Mom, she set down the phone and looked out the kitchen window. Luke was pushing Sophie on the swing. Nathan was teaching Julian to throw a frisbee. Linda's sons were setting up for another cornhole game. Her family, rebuilt, different than she'd imagined, but real. "You okay?" Linda asked. "Yeah," Helene said. "I really am." Helene's dining room table was crowded. Linda and her family on one side. Luke and his fiancée Rachel, a kindergarten teacher he'd met at a GA meeting, on the other. Nathan and the twins, now 7 years old and gap-toothed from lost baby teeth. And at the far end, looking thinner but clear-eyed, sat Camille. She had completed her program 4 months ago, started working as a receptionist at a dental office, moved into a small apartment she could actually afford. She and Nathan were in couples therapy, taking it slow, no promises. Before dinner, Camille had pulled Helene aside. "I brought you something." She handed over an envelope. Inside, a check for $500. "First payment," Camille said. "I calculated what I owe you. $187,000. At $500 a month, it'll take 31 years. I'll be 65. You'll be 93. She smiled, tentative. "But if we're both still alive, I'm paying you back." "Camille, let me finish. I'm not doing this to earn your love. I already have that. You've told me that 100 times in therapy. I'm doing this to earn my own respect. Deal?" Helene pulled her daughter into a hug. "Deal." Now, as everyone settled around the table, Helene stood at the head with a glass of wine. "I want to make a toast," she said, "to family, not the one we were, but the one we're becoming, to hard work, second chances, and the courage to change." Everyone raised their glasses. "To family," they echoed. Helene looked around the table, at Linda, who'd stood by her, at Luke, 9 months sober and thriving, at Nathan, proving that good men exist, at the twins, innocent and loved, at Camille, trying so hard to rebuild, at the life she'd fought for. "To family," she repeated softly, and meant it with her whole heart.